Hi, it's Doug DeVitre with the CoTrackPro Podcast, and today I have a very special guest. She's a big supporter of men's mental health in ways that you can't imagine. Welcome, Ms Halima, to the show.
Thank you, Dor. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, tell us where you're from. Tell us some of the projects that you're working on. I think this is going to be really interesting for those that are working as advocates in other countries to see kind of what some of the trends are and the amazing work that you're doing in Nigeria.
Right. So my name is Halima Layeni. I am a men's mental health advocate. I am also the founding director of the Life After Abuse Foundation, a nonprofit organization that provides free mental health support for boys and men who have experienced trauma or abuse. And we pretty much implement our projects via community engagement, policy advocacy, media advocacy, and psychosocial support. So far, we've been able to successfully reach more than 20,000 boys and men globally with our programs and projects.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. And so, how did you get started in something like this to be an advocate of such capacity?
I like to think that it's inborn, right? I think that advocates are just special human beings who are empathic towards other people's pain. I think it's just identifying or knowing, it's just the knowing that you can't really stand injustice or unfairness, towards another human being and just being able to do something about it. So I like to believe that we were chosen people, like we advocacy chose us. Like it's not a career choice that we choose, right? I just think that, it's just something that is inborn and that just carries you all through.
Sure. Well, there had to be something maybe in particular that you experienced, either through a loved one or personal friend. A lot of people who have been on the podcast have gotten into advocacy because, a personal experience. And, I don't expect you to go into any big detail, but was there something maybe personal to you that brought out this work?
Um, Not really. I've always been an advocate, like since when I was young. I've always loved to fight for people and stand up to people, right? But I would say that the exact turning point for me was when I experienced sexual abuse as a child. And, just like every other survivor, I had to go through many years of pain, of trauma and depression. And I remember just waking up and not feeling all those emotions anymore, all those negative emotions. And I guess um, it was just the desire to want to share that strength, with other people who have been through what I went through. And it was just the desire to want to save someone, people who were still struggling. Um, and that was pretty much how, I professionally came into advocacy. And then I started speaking to young girls and from speaking to young girls and encouraging them that, there really can be life after abuse. There's purpose after abuse. There's love, after abuse. It's not the end of the world, right? So from speaking to young girls in my community to helping them actually get the support that they actually needed. And so I guess that was where the work really began, connecting survivors to support systems where they could really get the help that they needed.
Sure, and you've chosen specifically now to focus on men and boys, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And so I'm curious to see more about to learn more about that.
Right. So one time during a community engagement where we're speaking to girls, a boy walked up to me and he was like, "What about me?" And that question, it was like a culture shock because I'm like, "What about you?" And he said, "It's not only girls that get abused, that I was also abused as a child." And I was shocked. Like I kept on thinking about it on the ride back home. I kept on thinking about the young boy that said that, I thought it was just for attention, maybe because, so many, women and girls had attention and then he just wanted attention. But the question couldn't stop ringing in my head. And I kept on thinking about it. And I just told the team, you know what? The next project would be on boys. Let's just try to explore and let's try to and then we came up with like a program. We identified the issues that boys were, suffering from, and then we initiated a project. Um, and it was truly humbling. It was shocking. You know, we kind of like give out feedback forms when we speak to, people, and just reading the stories of boys and what they had suffered from. It was a culture shock for me. And then I guess I just said to myself, women and girls already have the attention that, they need. We have thousands of NGOs, ensuring that women and girls got the help that they needed. And we had nothing for boys at the time when I started my advocacy for boys and men. And I just made a decision that, you know what, I think that we should actually, travel this path and try to focus on boys. And from adolescent boys, we started speaking to adult men as well. And, every room felt different. It just kept unraveling. It was like stories of trauma and abuse and sexual abuse and male domestic violence and things that they were struggling with silently as men. And I think that, the hardest part of that was knowing that there were really no systems in place to actually help them. But I think that, just listening to somebody kind of like does something to them, and just the knowing that there's somebody out there who actually cares about their pain and their suffering, actually did something to them. And I guess that's how we pretty much started with boys and men advocacy.
Wow, it's I can imagine just being in a room like that where you've had the first opportunity to speak up and be heard. It has to be really powerful, not just for the person who is speaking up, but everybody else in the room. Can you tell us like how that reinforces and builds a stronger community?
I think community is very powerful. And I think that beyond the power of community, just having someone who can listen, right, to you. And I think that that's something that many boys and men do not have, because, you know, 99.9% of the time when they try to speak up about their experiences, they are either judged, mocked, or dismissed. There's something about male suffering that doesn't really sit well with people, because of the social conditioning of the male gender, right? So I think it's more of just being in a room with someone or just speaking to someone who kind of like just gets it, just gets the pain, even if you can't really provide the help or the support that the person needs at that time, just being able to listen to them at that time is one of the most powerful gifts that you can give a man.
Yeah, I love that. And so you've been able to do that locally. At what point did it become a global mission where you started to share your success with other people?
Uh, I would say that I think that if you're an advocate, right, the chances of becoming a global voice is very high, especially if you are authentic and you're pushing for, something that is significant. I don't think that it'll be hard for you to get scouted by organizations or people who matter, right? So I would say that I just do my thing. I just, when I get breaks from work, I just, you know, go online, advocate for male domestic violence victims, boys who have been sexually abused, when I'm on break and I think that I have been scouted by certain organizations believe that there's who believe that my work is relevant in this age and time, especially for boys and men who are invisible victims, right? So I would also say that sometimes I'm also a part of like some leadership fellowships that kind of like gives you that global visibility. Some of them are the Carrington Youth Fellowship, the Changes.org, We Create Change program, um, amongst others. I mean, I can't really remember everything at the top of my head, but I believe that those fellowships kind of like they give you some sort of visibility as well. But I think that the bulk of the work just really comes from your advocacy and being authentic about it.
Sure. And with technology that we have today,
Right,
we can reach more people. And at
right,
the same time, there can be a point where it does become a little excuse me, inauthentic, right? So
right.
how do you balance that to where you're able to still help the people in the community, but you don't kind of let the technology kind of take over?
I have a team. I have an organization. So I have a team who does, I mean, the bulk of the work. We have a team of psychologists, we have a team of doctors and legal professionals. So beyond offering free mental health services to boys and men, we kind of like also ensure we know men don't like to go to the doctors. So we kind of like have a team of doctors as well and who speak to men via Zoom. So we can reach like more people, and that's how we're able to reach like a global audience because we kind of like use technology. So I mean, the team does their work, and I do my work as an advocate. I feel like I'm pretty much the face of the advocacy. So most of the advocacy has to come from me because I'm kind of like known for men's mental health advocacy. So they kind of like leave the advocacy to me. Um, I mean, we also have social media managers and all of that, but because I'm passionate about the work, I feel like the advocacy has to come from me, right?
When you've written a couple books on this, tell us about those.
Yeah, so I wrote Dear Man, Unplanned. However, I think that Dear Man came from just years of, speaking to men. I've been very privileged. Many people say that men are great with me, but I don't think that's a fact. I think that if anyone creates a safe space for a man to freely talk about his pain or his suffering, I think that he would open up. I don't think it's an Alima thing, right? So I think that Dear Man just came from listening to men and how they've struggled with expressing their emotions and how they've carried pain and trauma, some from childhood up until adulthood, how it has impacted their lives, their marriages, their relationships, spoken to men who struggle with intimacy. It's not because they don't want to love their partner, but they just don't have the language for it, or they just don't know how to. I've spoken to men who suffered male child sexual abuse and growing into adulthood, some of them were exposed to sex at a very, very young age. And somehow they got caught up in the web of sex addiction. And now that they're adults, they can't really help themselves. Um, and there's just one thing I found to be consistent. Men are carrying pain and suffering, and they don't have the language for it. And society makes it harder for them. And I guess their man pretty much came as a letter or um, as a safe space, really, for men to find a language for their emotions, to be able to unlearn certain toxic values that has been taught to them as children and has had an impact on their adult life. And and also finding a space to be vulnerable and to be able to freely express their emotions. So that's pretty much what Dear Man is all about.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think, social media many times has us thinking that we have to kind of be something or be able to keep up with everybody else. So it creates these false expectations of what life is. And as we live life, you know, most people we experience some of this pain. So I wonder, how can we curb this social media aspect where it can maybe create examples that we need to unlearn later in life?
Could you rephrase that question?
I'm
I'm not sure
sorry.
I got.
Thank
Yeah,
you. And it was kind of a backwards question. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that again. And so I'm really referring to the impact social media is having on mental health.
right.
And how in certain situations it can be more harmful to participate in it, especially through the wrong lens. I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on that and how we can maybe use social media for good to support men's mental health.
Right. I think I can totally relate to that from my advocacy work. There's this public perception that men are the perpetrators and women are always victims. Men are always the perpetrators. And also, boys and men are have been tagged, have been demonized for lack of a better word. Um, online. I don't want to like repeat the words that are being used, on men. And I get it, I get it. Women and girls have suffered many years of oppression and assault and pretty much all of that, rightly so, right? But I still think that we need to find a balance, right? So what that really does is it shuts the invisible victims, it shuts them up. So when for instance, you talk about male victimizations, you get comments from feminists, saying, quoting statistics, that, that this women are bound to like go through this more, you know, and then my stance has always been and would continue to be that even if it's when one man he matters, like his life matters, his story matters, his experience matters. I mean, that's somebody's father or brother or husband or it's a human being. And justice should have no respect for statistics. Justice is here to fight for everyone. And so men and boys are equally deserving of protection. They're equally deserving of support. They're equally deserving of justice, right? So I play my part. I know that, social media is, it can be overwhelming sometimes. Sometimes I just try to like go offline just to, ensure that my mental health is when I start getting attacked, for some controversial posts. I would not really say they're controversial anyway. They are just uncomfortable truths that I feel like the world is not really feminist and not really ready to have yet, but it has to be said. These conversations need to be had. And it's okay if they disagree, or it's okay if we are not if they are not there yet, because that's what change comes with. It comes with disagreements, but what's important is that we're having progressive conversations about these things. We're actually talking about it. men are coming in my comment sections and they are speaking about their experiences. They are finding a safe space to talk about, to freely speak about their experiences, even if, sometimes they're attacked or even if sometimes I'm attacked, which is fine actually. So I would say that I think that we just need to keep having conversations. I don't think anybody has control over we can enact policies. And I also think that my advocacy is beginning to give birth to other male-centered advocacies, right? We have more people, more lawyers talking about male victimizations. And I think that's the beauty of advocacy. The more you have these conversations, the more people see the need why we need to have these conversations. So I would just say that we just need to keep having the conversations. Whatever ideas you can get women to unlearn, whatever toxic ideas that they hold currently, because you need to understand that it's also a social conditioning. They've been socially conditioned to think in a certain way, right? So I just do my bit as an advocate to try to get them to unlearn that. And I guess it's working. I hope it's working. I really think it's working though, because I feel like the attack has reduced, a great deal. People that used to like disagree and, insult me, they're now much nicer in the comment section. So I think it's working. It's
I
working.
think
Yeah.
I think you do a fabulous job, not just
Thank
not
you.
just through your posts and your creativity, but also in how you respond to others. I think there's a certain level of grace, that
Thank
kind of
you.
comes with this advocacy work. It's just fun. It's just fun to watch you kind of and I'm just grateful and also grateful to be able to support you. Are there any websites people can visit? Because I know you're involved with a couple different programs. What are some of the best websites people can check out to learn a little bit more about the work you're doing?
www.laughng.org. That's www.laaf.org. All the information are there.
Wonderful. Well, I appreciate you being a part of this podcast. We're going to share with a lot of people here to help continue these conversations around mental health. Um, maybe share with us one last thing that you're most excited about in supporting others in this capacity?
I would really say that I'm excited that male male domestic violence is beginning to get the attention that it needs. This past month, I started advocating for male domestic violence victims last month, and it's been truly humbling. I've gotten DMs, like tons of DMs from men, speaking about their experiences, something that they can't even discuss with their friends or anybody, like, men in power, like powerful men, just reading their stories and the gory experience of what they're actually going through in the hands of their female partners has been really heartbreaking. And I think that this is something that nations of the world need to like pay attention to. We need more policies that protect boys and men. We need to stop arresting male victims of domestic violence. We need to start rescuing them. We need more representation on the global governance level, which is the United Nations. We need governments to create, we need more funding for shelters for men. We need more specialized mental health systems and structures for men and boys, like specific to men and boys. Um, and I think that that's just what I'm excited about. I think that I've been truly blessed to have attention from people who matter, like, policymakers. And I'm excited that, in the coming weeks, where I get to launch my policy brief on male domestic violence, I truly hope that, we're able to create something powerful from that. Thank you.